meeting is being recorded.
All right, everybody, we're back here again with author Kevin McAleer talking about some of the great literature he knows and loves. And we've been through Jack London, Ernest Hemingway, F. Scott Fitzgerald, Raymond Chandler, and we're now checking out some James M. Cain. We started last week with Double Indemnity, the book, screenplay, and film. And this week we're examining The Postman Always Rings Twice, another title of James M. Cain, another famous title of James M. Cain, of which, of course, there's a famous movie as well. And I'd assume there's a screenplay of it as well that could be read. But I only read the book, Postman Always Rings Twice, the novel. And I don't know what Kevin read. Maybe he read just the novel, maybe the screenplay, maybe saw the movie. What was your experience of this work this week, Kevin?
I only read the novel. I've read it 3 or 4 times previously. I love it. Unreserved love for this novel. Why? It starts out with one of the great lines in literature. You were talking great opening paragraphs with Hemingway some videos back.
The Farewell to Arms paragraph.
Farewell Arms, which I didn't diss, but I said, well, there's lots of great opening paragraphs. This is a great opening line. They threw me off the hay truck about noon. Talk about in media res. You're right in it. And I'm not the first guy to come up with this. You Google this, you'll see all kinds of authors over the decades, ever since the book came out in 1934, commenting on this. How it throws you right into the action and it never stops. It doesn't stop until the final line. That pace I talked about last time, I just love the pace. And I don't know how he does it, because I'm always tempted, as a lover of Chandler, for example, to sort of linger on certain passages that I think can be kind of spun out to create even greater enjoyment for the reader. But Cain he is just sinew and bone. And that's probably the #1 reason why I love this and love Cain's work in general, at least his very tip-top stuff. So I'll just start with that.
I have a quote from Tom Wolfe on James M. Cain. He said, "Nobody has quite pulled it off the way Cain does, not Hemingway and not even Raymond Chandler."
Yeah, well, in terms of that tautness, correct. Chandler took time out, to crack wise and to ponder the cosmos through his character of Philip Marlowe, to elaborate certain scenes in poetic fashion. There's none of that with Cain. There's a little bit of humor in Cain, but it's few and far between. It's just grim. It's grim from A to Z primarily, is how I would term it. And that's good. I mean, you're not there to read some kind of Pollyannish view of the world. You're there to get a good, taut thriller with lots of evildoers and, lots of comeuppance and, or not. It's suspense. The definition of suspense. For me, Cain is the master of suspense, not Hitchcock. Hitchcock has many lulls. I find Hitchcock boring at times. I know you love Vertigo. I would argue that's why I don't like Hitchcock. I find it very boring at times. We don't have to get into that one. But as a point of reference for both of us, I find Cain to be the true master of suspense.
There's other movies by Hitchcock besides Vertigo, though. What about
Psycho turns the trick? Yes, Psycho does it. But
what about North by Northwest?
Nah, I don't like it much. I'm a Hitchcock naysayer. I know this is going to get me in trouble, but I don't care. I'm too old to care. But anyway, back to Cain, and that's why I love him. Suspense with a capital S.
Okay. Very good.
For starters.
How many times had you read this? This is your second?
No, third or fourth, fifth time. Yeah, many times.
And
It's a
what
quick
about the
read.
movie?
You can read it in one sitting. We should let viewers know. You can read. It's about 80 pages in my version of it, a big hardcover. You can read it in 4 or 5 hours, even if you're not a fast reader. It's a great read.
Did you watch the movie this time around?
No, no, I didn't. I didn't want to spoil it. I didn't have the time, or maybe they weren't even available. I didn't check it out. No,
Are
I
you a
was
fan
satisfied. I was completely satisfied. And by the way, after reading a short novel for, I think let's say a half dozen times. Yeah, this could be the sixth or seventh. My tally is upping as I speak. I'm not bored for a second. And it's not like reading Moby Dick for the sixth or seventh time, where you're missing all kinds of stuff the first, second, third time around.
Yeah.
And you go, oh yeah, that's a great passage there. Oh yeah, you're right. Starbucks. That's when Starbucks talking about this. Oh yeah, that's interesting. No, you almost know this one by heart, but you're just taken on this roller coaster ride. So obviously my enthusiasm has no bounds. So maybe we can get down to brass tacks and tell people what I'm actually talking about.
Yeah, give us a summary of the plot if you could.
All right, I just got done popping off and saying how I almost know it by heart, but let's see if I can do this somewhat quickly in comparison to past podcasts. It is a rather simple story. The cast of characters is very limited. Frank Chambers is the narrator. He's the fellow who says they threw me off the hay truck about noon. And he is a drifter. He's 24, young man, and he drifts into this little cafe, roadside cafe, on the way to LA, somewhere out there in the hinterland. He goes in there for a bite. He doesn't have any money. He's going to try and fake his way through a meal. And it's owned by a Greek fellow named Nick Papadakis. He is referred to in the book almost exclusively, after we first learn his name, as the Greek. So maybe we can stick with the Greek. And his wife is the waitress in this little diner. Her name's Cora, and she's Cora Papadakis. And we're like on page 2, and Frank is absolutely smitten by this Cora. And he thinks to himself, well, boy, maybe I can stick around for a while. Maybe I can put my drifting ways on hold for a while. You know, he's got designs on this woman. Has to be said right off the bat, this Frank Chambers has very few scruples. He has so few scruples that I wouldn't even call him immoral. I'd call him amoral. As we see, you know, his actions evolving throughout the book. So he basically wants to get close to this wife of this Nick Papadakis. So he hires on to be a helper around the place. This Nick actually needs someone to help around the place. He's got a little motel, a few cottages there, a little motel adjoining the roadside diner. Wants Nick to kind of be his girl Friday, as it were, do odd jobs here and there. But what happens is that before very long, Cora and Frank are having an affair. And they plan to kill the Greek, Nick Papadakis, Cora's husband. Why? Is there an insurance policy here, like in double indemnity? No. Provisional no. Okay. They're just crazy about each other. And you ask, why can't they just run off with each other? People do this all the time, just run off. Well, Cora doesn't want to hit the road like Frank does. She likes her diner. She likes, she wants to make a little money. She wants to establish herself there. But without the guy who helped get it started and put the money into it, without Nick. And that explains to you why she doesn't want a divorce. She wouldn't get anything, right? In all likelihood. That's the only logic I can see. Because you do ask yourself, well, look, guys, don't kill the poor guy. He's actually a very nice guy. And they're going to kill him. It's like, just run off with each other. Have your, have your fun and just leave it all behind. But she doesn't want to leave it behind. That's the thing. She wants to eat her cake and have it too. So they try and kill him. I won't go into that. It doesn't succeed. But they are not charged with the murder. And then a short while later, there are a few developments in the plot, but Frank and Cora are still in love with each other, in lust with each other, I would say. Cain describes their amorous passages as more kind of animal lust than anything. And so, still being in lust / love, they decide to try it again. Try to knock him off again. Well, I won't go into that one either. It just we get into too much technical detail. But this time they succeed. And they succeed in killing him, but they don't get off scot-free this time. And one of the reasons is that there is indeed, yes, an insurance policy on Nick's life, which he took out after his first accident where they tried to kill him. They were trying to simulate him falling in the bathtub, and Cora came up with a bag of ball bearings and whacked him on the head and knocked him out. The idea was she was going to put his head under the water in the bathtub and he would drown. That got foiled. We don't want to get into that right now, if ever. And then shortly thereafter, he took out an accident policy on himself for the proud sum of $10,000 for his widow if he dies in any kind of accident. And the second murder that they stage is a simulated accident. I think it's in Malibu Canyon, as far as I can figure it out. They push the car off the side of the cliff with a dead Nick already in it, and then they pretend that they were actually in the car too. But the district attorney, and here's the fourth character in our little drama, Sackett, the DA Sackett, he's not buying it. He smells a rat, and he reveals the fact of this insurance policy to Frank, who's all racked up in the hospital, by the way. He got kind of caught up in the accident. That wasn't planned that way, but it looks very good now that, the Greek is dead. How could Frank have killed him? Because he was all beat up in the accident too. So the suspicion falls on Cora. Frank signs a complaint against Cora, because if he doesn't sign a complaint against Cora, it makes him look bad, like he's part of the conspiracy to murder the husband. We get into all kinds of legal detail here, but the catalyst of this, the second drama that ensues after the second attempt and successful one on Nick's life, the catalyst is actually this insurance policy that they didn't know about, right? They would have wished that it weren't there. They would have just gotten the cafe and fine. But that then puts the insurance guys on them. And we already talked about this in Double Indemnity, and Sackett says it in the book. He says, bad luck with this insurance policy. These guys have 5 times the resources that I, as a DA, have to sniff out foul play. So tough luck, Chambers. And he gets Chambers to sign this complaint. Well, anyway, this fellow named Katz, smart Jewish lawyer, he comes in and he pulls their chestnuts out of the fire through some fancy insurance, dipsy doodle, legalese. It's a little bit too involved at this stage, but they get off. They get off this, second little episode. And then we have the love rack. This is what I talked about last time, where Cora and Frank, they start to mistrust each other. Well, because Frank signed this complaint against Cora. And he said he was coerced into doing it. He was scared. Okay, good. We can all understand that. But Cora doesn't understand it because she was up for murder/manslaughter at that point. She gets off, okay, with a 6 months manslaughter conviction, suspended sentence. And in the 6 months, they actually, kind of make up. They get the cafe up and running again. Does good business. And then Cora goes back home because her mother's dying. She's from the Midwest or somewhere not California. She goes back to the Midwest. And at this point, Nick's feeling restless because it's in his blood, right? He says, I'm such a gypsy that I was born with rings in my ears. So he meets a woman at the cafe. And this woman, she raises big cats, tigers, lions, jaguars. And she convinces him to go down to Mexico with her for, a little fling, 3-4 days. He does that. And then she tries to convince him to go down to Nicaragua with her to catch some pumas. At this point, you're sort of wondering, wait a second, what's going on with the plot here? Where are we going with this? Because usually it's, as I just described it 10 minutes ago, from first line to last, it's just this taut, and to take a phrase from Double Indemnity, straight down the line narrative. Well, here there's a little turnout, scenic turnout, we think, but it does play a role later on. Well, Frank doesn't go down to Nicaragua with her. He's the hold that Cora has on him is just too great, and he goes back. And he welcomes her off the train. When she comes back, her mother has died. And it seems like all's well that ends well, right? They're going to get back together. It's, going to work between them, and they're going to make the cafe work, and they got away with murder. Well, they haven't quite, because what happens is that one fine day, a fellow named Kennedy shows up, the 7th player in our drama, if we count this Catwoman whose name is Madge Allen. And at a certain point in the legal proceedings which ensued after the successful killing of the Greek, and after Frank had made this complaint to the district attorney, Sackett, Katz had come in, and he had taken down through an underling of his a full confession of Cora's, because she felt, well, Frank's turning on me, well, I'm going to turn on him. Okay, I might be guilty, but he's guilty too. So she gave a full confession. It was typed up by this underling of Katz's, and his name's Kennedy. Well, everything's, fine and dandy, it seems. It's about a year later or so, and Kennedy strolls in. And he says, hey, yeah, it looks like you got a nice business here, huh? And things going good, huh? Life's nice. You want to keep it that way, don't you? And he's got the little confession. He doesn't hold it up, but he's got the confession. He was the guy who typed down the confession, right? He doesn't work for Katz anymore, for whatever reason. Maybe he's in a tight spot, but now he knows where to go for some money because they actually got the 10,000 from the insurance policy. They actually got that. So they got the 10,000, and then they got the nice cafe and everything else. So he wants some money at this point. All right. Well, Frank isn't going to have any of it. They get in a tussle. Frank overpowers him. He gets the guy to call his henchmen who actually have the confession, that they bring it, and because ostensibly Chambers is going to pay up. So this is Kennedy on the phone, with Chambers with a gun on him, or actually it's Cora with a gun on him, making sure he doesn't misspeak. And these guys come. He's got 3 or 4 henchmen. They come, and then Frank and Cora. This is like really Bonnie and Clyde stuff. They got guns on him, and they frisk him, and they not only have the original confession, but they got 6 photostats and 1 negative. And they take it all. Why they brought them all, even Frank can't understand. How stupid can you be? You bring the photostats of the whole batch with you. Well, he burns them. Okay, he gets these guys out of there. Seems like everything's fine now at this point. Well, as it so happens, that very evening, while Frank had been keeping this Kennedy in a little shed there on the premises, he was keeping him there, watching over him, because the guys, his henchmen, were going to be coming in the morning. This Madge Allen, this Catwoman who'd gone down to Mexico with Frank some months back, she came and she had a little puma. Maybe she wanted to rekindle things with Frank, who knows? But anyway, it comes out that she had an affair with Frank. And of course, this doesn't sit very well with Cora. So as soon as they get the photostats and the whole thing, burn them and get rid of these guys, okay, another obstacle has been overcome in their lives, it seems. Then Cora comes up, she goes, okay, yeah, the photostats are gone, but I got 1 million photostats right here. He goes, what are you talking about? Ha, 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 she cackles kind of hysterically. You know who just came by last night while you were in the shed with Kennedy? Madge Allen. Does that ring a bell? Right. Okay, so she's insanely jealous. And she's going to turn Frank in because she's scot-free at this point. She got off on a manslaughter charge, and there's no double jeopardy. It's in the Constitution. You can't do it. So she's off scot-free. But if they read her confession, well, if they don't have it anymore, but if she confesses or at least pins the blame on him, he'll hang for it. So you have this, so that then we really have the love rack where they're watching each other over 24 hours, seeing what the other person does. Oh, well, anyway, we come to the end, and they really are in love with each other. And Cora can't do it. She said, I can't do it, Frank. You're no good. You're a bum, but I still love you. And by the way, I'm pregnant. I mean, just one thing after the next. This is like 80 pages. Okay. And he goes, well, I'm in love with you too. And you do believe that they really are in love with each other. It's not like Double Indemnity where it's pure lust at the beginning. You don't even know if they go to bed with you. You don't know what's going on. I mean, Cain sort of tiptoes around the issue, but you imagine they might be, it's on a sexual level. But then as soon as the murder's committed, Huff, the insurance salesman, he says, I hated her. I just never wanted to see her again. That's not the case here. That's not the case here. There really is something going on between them. Anyway, they go to the beach, and she says, Frank, now you got to prove to me that you really love me, because I'm going to swim out there. We're going to swim out beyond the breakers. And you know something? You can very easily fake my death by drowning. You can just hold me under and kill me. Here's your chance. Never have to worry about me betraying you. And he doesn't do it. Right? And they come back in. They get in the car. And she seems to be having not birthing pains because she's not that far gone, but cramps in her stomach and everything. She's hurting badly, and he wants to rush to the hospital. While rushing to the hospital, they have an accident, and she dies. And then what happens is this DA Sackett, he comes back into the scene because he wants to get his back, and he pins the blame for Cora's death on Frank. He calls him a mad dog, and that he had also been responsible for the murder of the Greek, along with Cora, but Cora is dead now, so it doesn't matter. How did he discover this? Well, Cora, because she was going to be leaving within that 24-hour period when they were both keeping their eye on each other, she's going to be actually leaving him. She tried to do it, and she had left a little note in the cash register that talked about how they had killed the Greek and all of this. She had mentioned that at least, and it was kind of like a love letter and a farewell letter. She didn't go, but she had forgotten the letter in the cash register. So she's dead. Frank never opened the cash register. They just went the next morning to the beach, and this is discovered, and Sackett has this, and so now Frank Chambers is going to, well, I said he's going to hang for it, but this is 1934, and I guess Frank Chambers is going to the gas chamber. Perhaps the name is not accidentally chosen. And he's writing all this. At the end, we see this. It's exactly like Double Indemnity in the book, where we find out at the end that the protagonist is writing all this just before he's about to die. Chambers' case, he's going to be executed. In Huff's case, in Double Indemnity, he's going to jump off the ship with, what's her name?
Dietrichson.
Mildred, was it Dietrichson?
Mabel?
I forget.
Mrs. Dietrichson will suffice.
That will suffice. So that's it. That's the story. And I think I got it. I got most of it. It's got a lot of twists and turns. And I didn't give you the half of it in terms of the convoluted legalese that particularly this lawyer Katz pulls off in order to get them off. But that's very interesting, actually, all that. And again, how insurance companies work behind the scenes. Again, a lot of inside stuff on insurance companies.
A lot of good dialogue in this book. And I noticed what you had mentioned last week, that he never says he said or she said. It's just
almost never. Oh, I checked. I checked myself on that. I said, was that actually true? It's true.
There was no he said or she said at all that I noticed.
You did a he said, she said -o-meter?
I did. And it came up 0.
It came up 0? Wow. Now that's a writer. That's a writer who can lead you into the dialogue without telling you specifically who's speaking, and it doesn't bother you, because it doesn't bother you. You know exactly who's speaking at all times, I think.
And even if you don't, within the repartee, you're going to hear someone mention a person's name.
Yeah.
Oh, I think so, Frank. And then you know it's Cora speaking. And
that's right. He'll throw that 3 or 4 lines into it if you're not
just exactly to give you a clue if you're not sure.
You don't even have to back up to read anymore. It's like, okay, yeah, I see. Yeah. He's very skillful that way.
I can't say I did an official he said, she said -o-meter. I'm not saying I was completely on top of it, but I never did notice it at all.
No, I didn't either. Again, with a Cain novel, if it's a good one, they're not all top notch. You're not even thinking in any kind of literary mechanical terms. And I'm very aware. I look at where they place commas normally, but when I read Cain, I don't. I'm gone. I'm just enjoying the ride. Really, truly is the case.
Do you like this book better than Double Indemnity?
It's tough. I mean, I think I told you last time I liked Double Indemnity, but when I read this, I thought there are actually it's actually a little bit more fun, because there are these little sort of seeming digressions, like with Madge Allen, the cat lady, to Mexico. It's like, what is this? And also with then this Kennedy fellow coming back trying to blackmail them. That was an interesting angle. That didn't have to happen. That didn't have to happen at all. We could have just gone from getting off the second time to then them not. But that was interesting too. I mean, but it all plays into each other. If you look at it retroactively, it all works out. And the title is of interest. The Postman Always Rings Twice. I never knew what that meant. And of course, I look around on internet and there are various versions of it. You have any insight on that one?
Did you check the Wikipedia on this one?
Yeah, sure. That's mainly what I'm referring to. Yeah.
I didn't have occasion to check up on the Wikipedia, but I've heard it before explained in terms of back then the postman would ring twice to let you know it's the postman as opposed to somebody else. And I think that the idea here is you got off the first time, but you're not going to get off the second time.
Right. Right. That sounds reasonable. Yeah.
Because he did get off the first time that he was suspected of murder, but he didn't get off the second time. And I know in the movie version, John Garfield, when he's in prison, he ends with kind of a soliloquy on the title, "The Postman Always Rings Twice." He
does.
He kind of meant, if I recall it correctly, he kind of mentions, "Yeah, I got off the first time. I didn't get off the second time. Justice is being served. The postman always does ring twice." Something like that. There's a little soliloquy there.
They give us a little explanatory footnote at the end of the film.
Yes, but not in the book. The book doesn't even address the issue.
No, not at all. That's why it's very mystifying. Yeah, your explanation is what I read on Wikipedia. To nuance it a bit, I think it's that Cain said somewhere, I think in some kind of preface to the novel at some later date when it was reissued, he said that in a conversation with a writer friend of his, the writer had told him that these were the days when people sent out manuscripts, by mail, as opposed to email these days, and they would wait for a response from the publisher, and which would come by mail, and that this fellow would be waiting on pins and needles for the postman with the certified letter or telegram. I don't know, because mail, you just drop it in the slot anyway. And every time he felt that the mail was on the way, or the mailman was on the way to give him the response from the certain publisher he'd sent his manuscript to, he was so nervous that he would go out into the backyard, and in order not to hear it, and that he would not hear the first time, but then he would hear the second time. That's the explanation given. It sounds really weird, but and Cain, apparently, in this little preface to the reissue of the novel, said that was the reason why he picked up on that phrase. Whatever. Yeah, but it's a catchy phrase. It gives one to think, and your explanation is as good as any. It's second time around you're going to get caught. You can only be so lucky so often, I think,
that's because the subtext.
Right, because the first time they try to kill the Greek, they are really lucky. It's a cat which climbs to a fuse box, which would seem to throw a monkey wrench or into the works, a cat in the fuse box. But mixing my metaphors terribly there. But what happens is that they don't get pulled before the magistrate for murder. It saves them. The cat saves them, and that's sort of interesting use of symbolism in this novel, because we have a cat in the first instance where they try to kill him, and the cat saves them, and then we have this lawyer whose name is Katz, and in German Katze is the name for a cat. So I'm sure this was chosen deliberately by Cain, cats, because he saves them in this case too. And then the cat woman who comes along, this Madge Allen, and that seems to be a problem actually with her. But who knows? Anyways, the cats are a theme here.
And we are then catapulted into the drama.
Very good.
All right. So we covered some of the key issues and aspects of the book. Is there anything we haven't covered here? Do you have any sample passages that you've denoted in your version of the novel?
Well, we could read the first paragraph.
Yeah, let's read the opening and closing paragraphs and see what they teach us.
Yeah, the first paragraph, picking up on your word catapult, it does just that. It just catapults us into the action. They threw me off the hay truck about noon. I had swung on the night before down at the border, and as soon as I got up there under the canvas, I went to sleep. I needed plenty of that after 3 weeks in Tijuana, and I was still getting it when they pulled off to one side to let the engine cool. Then they saw a foot sticking out and threw me off. Excuse me. I tried some comical stuff, but all I got was a deadpan, so that gag was out. They gave me a cigarette, though, and I hiked down the road to find something to eat. That was when I hit this Twin Oaks Tavern. And that's enough. So he's in the tavern, he's in the situation, he meets Nick in the next couple sentences. He meets the wife on the very next page. It's almost like, well, I won't say it's almost like, but anyway, then I saw her. She had been out back in the kitchen, but she came in to gather up my dishes. Except for the shape, she really wasn't any raving beauty, but she had a sulky look to her, and her lips stuck out in a way that made me want to mash them in for her. Meet my wife. Anyway.
Yeah, the interesting thing about that, if you can maybe go to the end of that chapter, I think it is.
Yeah.
When he talking about wanting to mash her on the lips, when he does, it says that he bit her and drew blood and drank her blood.
Yeah, I know.
He bit her on the lips.
That always freaked me out.
I mean, if you want to have a clandestine affair, the last thing you want to do is bite her on the lip and draw blood. There's going to be suspicion on the part of the spouse there.
Yeah.
So very.
I find those passages amusing. Bite me. This sounds like something that would happen in later on down the line in a real kind of understanding between a couple where you have a kind of sadomasochistic relationship. Some people enjoy that, whatever, but not the first time you kiss the woman. Bite me.
His first kiss is a bite. Yeah,
it's a bite,
and she requested it.
Yes. And he talks about it wasn't as if he just drew a little blood. It was running. It was in his mouth and running down her chin. I don't know how he describes it exactly, but there is a definite sort of masochism that goes along with this Cora character.
Yeah.
There's also the scene where they push the car over the cliff with a dead Nick in it, Malibu Canyon. Second time they try to kill him successfully, and then they run down the cliff to check it out, make sure he's dead, and then to kind of get a little messed up themselves. And at one point, Cora says, because they gotta look like they've been in a crash too. She goes, "Rip me." Rip me, like bite me, rip me. Hey, he just rips her blouse off, so she's now bare-chested. And Cain goes into a rather erotic description of that. and then he slugs her.
Black, right in the eye.
Yeah, but he doesn't do it gratuitously. In other words, Frank Chambers might have a little bit of the sadist in him, but he's doing this for purposes of camouflaging their crime because, first of all, after he rips her, he says, "You got that trying to get out of the car." And then he hauls back and says, "And this you don't know how you got." Poof! She doesn't complain. So there's kind of a sadomasochistic thing going on between them, a little bit more masochistic on the side of Cora, I should think, because this guy is kind of no good. This Frank Chambers, I described him as being at least amoral at the beginning. I think that holds true. And she loves this guy. So you draw your own conclusion.
And then, the masochism comes through again when she says, "Hey, let's go out deep into the ocean and go ahead and drown me if you want."
Right. Indeed. Good one. Yes. Didn't think of that. Yeah. So this Cora, she's bad news. I mean, Frank Chambers is almost normal in comparison to her. I mean, you could kind of understand how, if he's completely crazy about this woman, and the only way she's going to stick it out with him is if he helps her kill her husband. You can kind of understand that, at least for the sake of a novel, for the motivation of a character, right? I mean, a normal person wouldn't do that. I shouldn't think. I certainly wouldn't. I don't care how crazy I am about a woman. I'm not going to murder someone. But she wants to murder her husband, okay? This is just a guy to him. Okay, he kind of likes him. He gets along with Nick very well. But he's just another guy. She wants to murder her husband. So she's verging on the wickedness of, here we have it, Phyllis is her name. Phyllis Diedrichson. She's verging on that. She doesn't have a history of murders as Phyllis did, but cold-blooded in her own way, while at the same time being, out and out masochist. I think we've established it right here.
How do you like the casting of John Garfield and Lana Turner in those two roles?
I saw it a long time ago. I can't comment on it. I do like Garfield because he's got that gritty, kind of tough, scrappy quality, which you sense in Frank Chambers. And and smart. He's no dumb bunny. Garfield too. You can kind of sense that. So I think he was a very good casting. I don't know about Lana Turner. I'm not a big fan of hers in general, but she was sexy enough, right? And if nothing else, this Cora is sexy because this DA Sackett even comments on it, right? That's how he starts to figure things out. He said, Come on, Chambers. You can't kid me. I'm a man too. I saw her. You were sleeping with her, right? You've been sleeping with this woman." He said, "Nah, nothing like it." "Come on, Chambers. I know how guys think." So even this DA who wants to hold Chambers' feet to the fire, he trots this out because he knows it's real, that this is a real bombshell of a woman, and she has this effect on men that could even drive them to murder.
And the last page is kind of interesting. He's in prison. He's been condemned. He's going to be going to his ultimate punishment. And he has this interior dialogue. Read us the last few paragraphs there, Kevin, if you can.
Oh, let's see. Just to finish it off, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Unless you have other passages within the book itself that you think are of note.
No. See, this is what I was thinking about as I was reading. There's no real passages that I should like to cite individually necessarily, a la Raymond Chandler. Because as I said before, there's nothing poetic or hilarious. It's just this relentless drive through the narrative to the doomed finish. There's not something you can hold up and say, wow, isn't that prose? Wow,
Yeah.
look at that turn of phrase. No, not really, because he uses very simple language. And this Frank Chambers is very ungrammatical in his language. He's not an educated man. I mean, I guess he's been on the road since he was a kid, 16, who knows?
Yeah.
It's depression. We shouldn't forget this, A lot of guys were on the road back then, 1934, right? 5 years into the Depression. This was not unusual that you're going to have some very, well, I was going to use the word worthy. I wouldn't call Chambers worthy, but very capable. Chambers is, if nothing else, a very capable man, right?
Yeah.
And no dummy. And you had lots of these guys out riding the rails, hitching rides, moving from one spot to the other just to maybe make a buck. Chambers is also a pool hustler. There's a nice little episode where he's hustling pool and then he gets hustled. And yeah, so I don't even know what the point I was trying to make is. Who cares? Oh yeah, there's no passages here that you want to hold up in admiration. I shouldn't think.
Yeah, it's all of a piece.
Absolutely. Well, I can do this. I'll just read it. Why not? We got time.
Yeah, last few paragraphs, read them.
Okay, good. I'm getting uptight now. And I've been thinking about Cora. Do you think she knows I didn't do it? Because again, the DA has pinned deliberate murder charges on him. And
you mean in the car accident? He's pinning that as a murder?
Yeah, because what Sackett said, the argument he made before the jury was that first Chambers and Cora had killed the Greek in order to get the cafe, and then the insurance too, now that it comes out. And then I left this out because there's just so many, every page is a new plot twist. Before they went to the beach, they got married. Just another component. Yeah, they got married. Yeah, I forgot to mention that. Whatever. But it's important here because then the widower of Cora then gets everything. She gets that $10,000 they got originally from the accident policy, which is still in the bank apparently. He gets the cafe, he gets the deed to the land, right? So the idea is that you knock off the husband, then you knock off your wife after you marry her. That's the argument that Sackett made. So, and they sent him up for it. Do you think she knows I didn't do it? After what we said in the water, out past the surf, you would think she would know it. But that's the awful part. When you monkey with murder, maybe it went through her head when the car hit that I did it anyhow. This doesn't make much sense. I'm going to leave off this. He's waiting for a stay of execution. He's hoping that there'll be a stay of execution or a commutation.
I'm curious, how would you kill a person in a car accident, purposely do a car accident to kill the passenger? Because you're liable to be killed in that too. I don't see that.
Because it was very similar to the accident that they staged in order to kill the Greek. And then this came to light after they discovered this note that Cora had written Frank and left in the cash register that morning, intending to leave him, but then they got back together and then they got married and went to the beach. So it was all of a piece in the sense that, well, he's just replicating the same murder technique here.
Oh, okay.
Because he got really racked up in that second murder attempt too.
Yeah.
Won't go into it, but he did. So, well, Tim, I'm not going to read it. Why? Because I realize that there's nothing there that might be of interest to the listeners. It just ends sort of. But the final line. I'll read the final line.
Read the last paragraph where it says, "I'm up awful tight now," because they bring in this guy, Father McConnell.
Yeah, I'm up awful tight now. I think they give you dope in the grub so you don't think about it. I try not to think. Whenever I can make it, I'm out there with Cora, with the sky above us and the water around us, talking about how happy we're going to be and how it's going to last forever. I guess I'm over the big river when I'm there with her. That's when it seems real, about another life, not with all this stuff how Father McConnell has got it figured out. When I'm with her, I believe it. When I start to figure, it all goes bluey. No stay. So no stay of execution. Its own separate paragraph. Here they come. Father McConnell says, prayers help. If you've got this far, send up one for me and Cora and make it that we're together wherever it is. It's kind of romantic at the end. You know, this was a love story. It wasn't pure lust. They finally didn't turn on each other. It seemed like they might have here and there, but they finally didn't. They stuck it out. And you could call it a tragic love story if it weren't for the fact that there's a dead man in the wake of it.
And this novel is told in the first person, I believe, right?
Right.
And he
Right.
did the same. He did the same with Double Indemnity.
Right. I love the first person. I mean, I write all my novels in the first person. I think it really brings you into the story in an intimate way, more so than with the third person. And maybe you don't like the narrator, well then, shut the book. It's not for you. But if you do like them at any level, and in these novels of Cain that we've reviewed, they are both murderers, these fellows. And you don't like them, you have antipathy toward them, but you find in a little corner of your heart a certain sympathy for them because they've been suckered, whether it be by their own wanton desires or their own stupidity or their own avarice, but they've fallen prey to something that they have no control over. And I think we've all been there before. And so that's how Cain engages your sympathy for these characters. And in the first person, it facilitates that attempt to have you identify, if not with them, at least with their lot, with their predicament, shall we say.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. How long is mine here? Mine has 116 pages. And it says here, interestingly, it was first published in 1934, and it was banned in Boston for its explosive mixture of violence and eroticism.
They banned everything in Boston back then. Lady Chatterley's Lover, well, that was banned pretty much everywhere until the 60s, that's true. But they banned everything in Boston. They banned Henry Miller, for years.
Why Boston? A lot of good Irish Catholic people there, I suppose.
Probably because the Catholic Church holds so much sway there. And it's Henry James country. I mean, kind of a puritanical thing mixed in with the Catholic morality, I should imagine.
And it says this is a classic of the roman noir. I've never really heard that phrase, roman noir. I've heard of film noir. I didn't know they had a phrase, roman noir.
Well, I'm sure they attached it to this book after film noir became a thing.
Okay.
It wasn't at the time.
Is that a phrase you're familiar with, roman noir?
I've heard it, yeah. I don't use it in discussing these things. I just call them hard-boiled mysteries or hard-boiled criminal fiction, something like that.
It established Cain as a major novelist with an unsparing vision of America's bleak underside and was acknowledged by Albert Camus as the model for The Stranger.
Right. I've heard that, yes. And you can see why, because in The Stranger, which I read many, many eons ago, the main character, he's strangely detached from things. He kills a guy on the beach, and he's just strangely detached from the whole thing. This is kind of like Frank Chambers. He feels no real guilt about killing Nick Papadakis. He never does. He's just worried about him and Cora and getting off and getting away with it. In that way, he's very unsympathetic, as opposed to a fellow like Huff in the novel, the insurance salesman in Double Indemnity. He does feel regret, and he tries to make it good by killing Phyllis, and also trying to get away with the murder himself. But he's also trying to protect her stepdaughter Lola, right? So there's a little bit more humanity in Huff than in Chambers. As I say, Chambers he's not even like a bad guy. He's just such an amoral, out for number one kind of guy. Maybe it doesn't even really occur to him. The only one he really cares about is Cora, which is at least something. He's not a total psychopath.
Sure. Okay, I think that brings us to the end of this novel, this roman noir. How about one more quote. Edmund Wilson calls Cain the master of the tabloid murder. I guess he got some of these ideas from the tabloids.
Yeah, that's what I read too. Yeah, some case in the 1920s. Yeah, I think both Double Indemnity and this one too. We got a lot of mileage out of this one certain case in the mid-20s. That's where a lot of writers get their inspiration from, the tabloids, and ripped out of the newspaper headlines.
Well, Kev, I think it would be a natural fit if we moved on to Mildred Pierce next week. Are you interested?
I hope so. Yes. That's the one people don't talk about as much as Double Indemnity and The Postman Always Rings Twice. But it deserves a good hour of incisive analysis, because that, for one thing, is a long novel. Okay.
Yeah.
It's not one of these 80, 100, 120 pages. That's a 300 pager right there. So that would require a good hour.
Will you be able to read it all this week?
I read it several times, so if I don't finish it, I'll at least have it up here pretty much.
All right. Let's turn toward that next week. Do you have any final thoughts before we sign off here?
James M. Cain, one of my great literary influences, because I'm trying always to get that pace into my work. Always I am. And particularly in my third novel, Postdoc, I really tried to get that in where we're just moving, boom, 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 boom. Pop, 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 pop. And I don't know if I did it, probably not, because it's not a plot-based novel. It's a voice-driven one. It's character-driven. But nonetheless, I'm trying to amalgamate that Cain, that relentless Cain pace with my own little brand of character-driven novels.
I just finished reading L.A. Kid this week. And you do keep a good pace in there.
Yeah, but I'm not trying to do it at the Cain level like I did with Postdoc, where I really tried.
There's a little more fluff put in there than the.
Yeah, we're trying to describe a certain milieu, a certain time and place, and
right.
You got to take your time with that. You can't just go zipping back and forth from one episode to the next. You got to linger on it for a bit.
So final question then: where does Cain rank in your pantheon of writers? Number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, in the top 5, maybe, right?
He's one of my great influences. We'll just say it. I mean, my great influences are Ernest Hemingway, Jack London, Raymond Chandler is a pattern emerging with our podcasts. James M. Cain and Charles Bukowski.
No F. Scott Fitzgerald.
I can't hope to aspire to his level of beauty.
Okay.
So I just put him aside and admire him from afar.
There you go.
Yeah.
The other ones you kind of integrate into your own style.
I can do Cain. I can do Cain a little bit. You know, I think I can. I can do Bukowski a little bit. I can do Hemingway a little bit.
Right.
Chandler, I can only hope to be able to say that at some point, but I can't do Fitzgerald. I can't
But
fake him.
but we can say that you do have your very own voice in here and your own voice in all your novels, despite the
Yes.
influence.
Well, yeah, but I'm just coming clean. I'm just being honest. You know, a lot of
Yeah,
writers try to cover up their influences,
sure.
cover their tracks because they don't want to be accused of plagiarizing someone else's style. But you always copy styles, at least when you're starting.
Sure.
Uh, and if I've achieved my own voice in the meantime, great. But I wouldn't mind being compared to James M. Cain. I wouldn't be mind compared to Hemingway. I don't care.
All right.
Thank you. You mean in the same breath. But yeah, those five guys, they form the bedrock of my literary influence.
I gotcha.
Yeah. All
Uh,
right.
all right, Kevin. So next week, Mildred Pierce, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you then.
Beautiful. Okay. Great.